What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is the Blacklist, Season 6, Episode 16, Lady Luck. So we get a few more steps forward as far as finding out who or what is going on with this whole conspiracy. One of Reddington's men, or guys that I guess worked for him, knows about what's going on, knows about this company. So it's basically about getting him, but then also taking down this blacklister that is using him and trying to get him killed. And yet, I will say it was a little lackluster, and part of that is down to the fact that, once again, because this is a more serious show, whenever they do something kind of goofy or a little bit silly, I will admit it sort of takes me out of it. Like that one moment where, Ron was trying to explain to Samar what was going on, all of his things with his mother, talking about how proud she was whenever he had a kid and all of this stuff. And she wasn't telling him that was a lie. And she just kind of let him dig himself deeper and deeper into like this. He just kept showing how much he wanted to have a kid, and she just kept not telling him that she wasn't actually pregnant. It was kind of goofy. It was a little, like I said, kind of sitcom. So whenever your villain of the episode is Lady Luck, and what she's doing is kind of interesting. I like the setup of it, where she basically punishes people who have gambling addictions because of, her very dark past. But the thing is one, she was very kind of goofy near the end. Like, everything she did with her husband and stuff, trying to kill him, like, I don't know, she just became kind of cartoonish. But also, you named them Taiki or Taichi, something like that. But the thing is, I saw the name because I have subtitles on, because it just makes it easier. And I saw that, and I'm like, wait a minute. I know that. From Persona 5, I know that. The Tai Chi charm gives you 10 plus luck. So I looked it up, and sure enough, Tai Chi, or I guess it's pronounced Taish in Greek, I think. It's the goddess of luck. I'm like, wait a minute. You seriously gave them the last name Taichi? Or Taiki? I think it was Taiki. I think that's how they pronounced it here. But essentially, you gave them the last name of the goddess of luck. Seriously. And yes, I'm not saying that there aren't some last names Taiki out there somewhere. But this is like Phoenix Wright levels of naming. Like, oh, look at that. They have the last name Taiki, and they're all about luck. Oh, ho, ho, aren't we clever with our naming? Like, it's just kind of goofy. And it kind of, when I saw that name, it took me out of it for a second. Because I was so lost in the fact that they really did a pun in the names. Like, what is that? Again, that's something I would expect out of a Phoenix Wright game. I wouldn't expect that out of the Blacklist. So that's why overall, between the main lady's acting near the end whenever she was trying to kill her husband, and then also that fact that they named them Taiki, it just really took me out of it, and it really made me feel like kind of goofed it up a little bit. And not like goofed as in made a mistake, but goofed it as in you made it goofy. And I don't like it whenever the show gets goofy. When it gets funny, that's fine, because Reddington can make some good jokes. There's some good one-liners between, Liz and Wrestler, or Ram and the team. Cooper's had some great one-liners this season. But whenever it gets kind of off the wall, kind of silly, it doesn't really fit in with the rest of the show. And so I feel like it kind of got into that territory for this one. But it was a small thing, so it's not like this episode has ruined my viewing experience. And it's not like I hated this episode overall. It's just those two things really kind of took this episode a few notches down in what's been a great season. But yeah, overall, it was fine. Reddington's hunt is really interesting, and it really puts a lot of pressure now on Dembe, because obviously he knows who put Reddington in jail, and Reddington basically admitted, I'm going to keep killing people until somebody steps up with knowledge of who sent me to jail. So now Dembe's going to feel like all of the bodies that pop up now after this point are on him, because he has the knowledge to stop it. And I'm sure he's probably going to go to Liz at some point and say, look, Reddington is on basically a murder spree, and he's going to keep killing people until somebody steps up and says what happened, who put him in jail. So it's definitely put more of a strain, I think, in the relationship between Liz and Dembe and Red, and like what's going to happen next is still very much up in the air. Kind of interesting to see Smokey Putnam gone too, though, because he's been kind of ever since he popped up a couple seasons ago, he's been kind of a mainstay. Like you'll see him every now and then. So to see that he's just been killed off in this episode, it's kind of interesting. Like there have been some of Red's cohorts in the past that we've seen a few times, and then suddenly they'll just be gone because they were killed. So whenever that happens, it's kind of not really emotional, but it's kind of like, oh, not gonna see him anymore. It's kind of sad. And then Wrestler, him digging into more of what's going on. Liz kind of gave him the go-ahead at the end of this episode to look into basically Reddington's past and find out who he is, because he has pretty much just as much reason to do so as she does because of how long Reddington has been on his radar. So it's one of those things that we as normal civilians wouldn't understand, but somebody who's been like a cop or an investigator of sorts, that feeling of there's this case that you didn't solve, and it's kind of that first case you didn't solve or something that you worked a long time on and you couldn't figure it out. I think that feeling may be known among other cops and other law enforcement. I don't really know that feeling because obviously I'm not a cop. But if I had to relate it to something, there are certain things in our lives, certain, I guess, ventures that we go into that we try really hard and we work on it for a really long time, and if it doesn't work out, it kind of sits with you for a long time of just like that disappointment and the regret of not being able to finish that task. I kind of feel like that might be the same thing going on with Wrestler here, where he's been working on catching Reddington for so long that now he finds out that this guy's not even Reddington, he's an imposter. I think that's kind of what's driving him and motivating him to keep pushing even further. But I did find it weird that at the end of it, again, Liz kind of gave her blessing for him to look into it, and then he didn't tell her that's what he was doing, It seemed like he was just about to, and then he didn't. So I don't know. Maybe he's keeping it from her so she doesn't get caught up in it, because he doesn't want her to have to deal with it since she's sort of moved on. But whatever the case, I don't know. It's a lot of interesting moving pieces, and again, we're finding out little bits and pieces of the puzzle of what this overarching conspiracy is. So they're just keeping my interest, keeping me engaged and on the edge of my seat about what's going to happen next. Just hopefully we don't have any more really goofy moments like we did in this episode. But I guess they're going to come back at some point because the daughter I guess she was play acting that she didn't know anything. And then at the end, she's like, I'm taking over the family business, which was kind of another goofy thing. Just like, oh, okay. I guess you'll be coming back or something. I don't know. But that's it for this episode. So on to the next one. See you there. And now episode 17, The Third Estate. So this one was full of people being dumb. Yeah, I mean, just the parents in this episode are complete idiots. Starting with, of course, the one that ends up getting his son killed, and then he goes and convinces the next two parents to be idiots as well. And I don't know, I always get frustrated. I've talked about this before in shows like NCIS or Criminal Minds. In a situation where there is a kidnapping, and it's like the son or a daughter, and they're talking to the parents, I can't count on one hand how many times I've watched a show like this where the parents do something stupid and end up screwing up something for the main, protagonist or whatever. And it just always irks me because I mean, I don't know. I get that sometimes this probably does happen in real life, like this may actually happen where people do get so emotional that they're not thinking straight and they're just like, oh, well, I can't trust the police, right? Like they're trained to do this, but I'm not going to trust them to do their jobs. Like maybe it does happen just in a fit of rage or in a fit of panic, but it's still frustrating to watch, and you kind of want to slap the parents and go, no, you're being an idiot. Now granted, it turns out that those two, it was their kids that were involved. It still doesn't really make what they were doing right. And on top of that, just the way they talked about it. Like, first of all, this guy, the first one, I forget his name. I think it was Mr. Foy, I think his last name was. Like, your son was already in danger, and basically you asked for help. You didn't plan on paying. and it got your son killed. Now, it didn't end up getting him killed in the end, but you asked for that. You asked for this help. And when it didn't work out and your son died because of you asking for help, you're blaming now the people you asked for help from. And then on top of that, to compound it, you go and you tell the next people, no, don't do what they tell you to do, because I did, my son died. Well, yeah, because you were an idiot. You're the one that didn't follow their instructions. You're the one that decided, I don't want to pay, and you got your son killed. And then the next parents are also idiots. Because, one, they tell them that they're not going to pay, and what's funny is, they're like, if you do your job, then our son will be okay, and then we can save him. Okay, if they do their job, they're going to save him. You have nothing to do with that. They're going to do their best. They're telling you how to help them do their best. You're not doing that, but they're still going to be the ones who save him in the end. You have nothing to do with that. So her trying to take credit was already dumb. Then you find out apparently she's got some pull. She forces them to go in early before they have enough information, and her son's one of the kidnappers, and he gets shot in the process, and I'm just like, well, there you go. That's why you don't interfere in things you don't know what you're talking about. So just a lot of dumb people in this one, and it always just pisses me off whenever you have characters like that. So it did kind of knock down my viewing experience a little bit. But the other thing was, it was kind of obvious as well who the bad guy was in the end, because there was one guy who had this kind of rack device that they were using. So, of course, whenever at the end they're like, who's in charge? I'm like, well, it's probably the guy who had the rack device, right? Like, he says he didn't sell it, so that means he's probably just letting them use it, right? And even his daughter called and said, hey, we've got an issue. So I'm like, yeah, he's probably involved. And sure enough, he's the one in charge. They find out there's no connection to McMahon, which, I don't know. I did kind of figure she was probably tapping the office, and I'm honestly kind of surprised that they're just talking. I don't know, maybe they're pretending like they don't know. Like, maybe we'll go back at some point and we'll see, they were faking this whole time, like, just talking everything like, I guess we didn't find anything for McMahon, and just basically blatantly telling her everything she needs to hear, because clearly she's got a tap in the office. Like, why wouldn't she tap the office? Like, if they don't know that she tapped the office, I'm going to be a little pissed, because that seems like something Reddington should instantly have thought of. It's like, no, she's going to be in here. She's probably going to find some way to keep tabs on all of us inside the offices, so let's not talk about anything important in here. But if he didn't tell them that, and he's just, like, fully letting them expose all of this stuff for McMahon because he didn't think that she would tap the offices, I will be a little pissed. But I don't know, it just seems like a very Reddington thing to do. And even that one comment that he made about, like, how her being a more worthy adversary, like, what did he say? It did attract him, or it turned him on a little bit or something like that. He's like, maybe it's the red hair. That did seem a little bit like, I don't know, kind of a Reddington way of maybe throwing something out there to make her feel like, ooh, now even Reddington's, he feels so played that I've even got his attention. I don't know if I doubt she would think of it in like ooh, he's got my, like, he likes me. I don't think she's thinking about it like that or anything. But just the thought of hearing your adversary be so impressed that they're kind of attracted to you, I think it's something that he would say if he knew she was listening, to kind of maybe throw a little unknown jab, like a subtle jab at her, to make her feel disgusted, but also like, aha, I've got him so deep into the corner that he actually feels intimidated and a little, maybe a little hard on for me. Like, I just feel like that's something he would do. But I guess we'll see. The other thing to talk about is you got Liz and Dembe, their little conversation at the end, and Dembe, again, he's struggling with this, and he's gotten to the point where he is going to say something to Reddington, but he wants Liz to have that chance first, which is a very Dembe thing to do. He's not somebody that's going to betray Liz and just be like, all right, Red, here's everything I know. But he will eventually, because he's not somebody that's just going to stand by and let Reddington keep killing people to get to the truth. And then on top of that, you got Wrestler on the other side, still trying to track down clues in the truth about Katarina. He does find a picture at the end, and I don't know who this guy is. It's some guy with like a hat and a beard. It's probably somebody we're supposed to know. And there was even I forgot to talk about this, but at the end of the last episode, whenever Reddington went to that one, the woman who had the choir that she was conducting at the end, she was somebody that I feel like I should remember, but I don't. And that's part of the problem with coming back to this show after so many seasons, just in between. Like, it's been years since I watched it last. There's some characters that I'm not really going to remember, and there's some plot lines I'm not going to remember. So I do hope they at least give me, like with the woman, I think her name was Janet, they didn't really give me much of anything aside from the fact that she didn't tell anybody about Reddington's deal with the task force. That's about all I got, and I don't remember anything about that. With this guy, you know, whoever he is in this picture, Wrestler seems to know who he is, and they seem to zoom in on him like, oh, this is a big deal. I do hope we get like some sort of remember this, just so it can kind of like, I guess, bring my memories to the surface, because I really don't have time to go back and watch the first 5 seasons again after all this time. So I hope they give me something that will at least like help me remember. If not, I'm just gonna have to look it up. But anyways, on to the final of these 3 episodes. See you there. And finally, episode 18, the Brockton College Killer. So this one was kind of a not great episode with some great moments in it. And I say that because the main story for this one, the Brockton College Killer, was not that interesting. Because first of all, it's very obvious to me. Like, I pretty much knew as soon as they brought up this case, and as soon as they showed the girl that was doing the podcast, I'm like, she did it. She did it. Everybody's like, okay, well, he confessed. There was apparently DNA. Like, he did it, clearly. And yet she's so very certain that he didn't do it. Well, then she did it. For me, it was either she's the one that did it this whole time, and it has something to do with him, or she did it now, so that way he could get out of prison. So it was one of the two, but I knew that she was the one at least doing the current killings. I knew that much. I just didn't have the full picture, and then you find out she's obsessed with him, so she was killing these girls that was in her way, and then she killed these girls to get him out of prison this time, and that's pretty much it. So it was pretty straightforward, kind of boring, honestly. Like, as soon as they talked about this professor, I'm like, okay, yeah, so this is basically like like a kid's mystery, like Scooby-Doo. Halfway through, they're like, oh, he's the guy, he's the bad guy, he's the obvious bad guy, he did it, he's the one in the mask, and then they rip off the mask at the end. It's like, oh, it was the person that we never thought could do it. They're doing a Scooby-Doo mystery in the Blacklist. Come on. So yeah, that was pretty obvious. And then the stuff with Reddington, honestly, was pretty obvious as well. I mean, it starts off very intense because Elizabeth finally tells him the truth about who put him in prison. But then he goes and sees Katerina's father, who that's the one that was in the picture. And I think I should have known that. Like, I did have a hunch. I was like, is that Katerina's father? But I didn't want to say it and sound stupid. But yeah, that is Katerina's father that Wrestler found in the picture. But yeah, I mean, when he goes to visit him, I was like, okay, what are they going to talk about? And ultimately what it comes down to is Reddington is trying to figure out what he should do now that he found out that the people closest to him betrayed him. And, of course, Katerina betrayed her father and betrayed everything they ever stood for, you know, by turning her back on the KGB. And so Reddington's just like, well, why didn't you take your revenge? Like, gee, I don't know. Could it be because of a little thing called love? Is that what this is all about? Is it the power of love? What's love got to do with it? I'll just keep throwing out these titles. I don't care. But, you know, it just seemed very obvious to me that, yeah, it's because he loved her. That's why he didn't take his revenge. That's why he didn't kill her, even though he killed multiple people before that betrayed him. And Reddington's in very much the same situation. I'm like, this is very obvious. Like, sometimes they do some subtle storytelling very well and they make subtle connections very well. This one was just very apparent. It's like, yeah, a father was betrayed by his daughter. She betrayed everything they ever stood for, but he didn't take his revenge. He didn't kill her because he loved her. Duh. So that was, I don't know, it was just very straightforward to me. And then on top of that, the other thing that I just remembered the fact that this case was just given to the team, and there doesn't seem to be any apparent connection to what's going on with McMahon and this conspiracy that they're going against. So it's another case that kind of feels like it was just sort of brought up for no reason. So I'm really hoping that this is all going to tie together somehow. Like, we're going to see why Reddington gave them this case, why this was so important. You know, he talked about keeping this kid in jail, but he's not the one that actually did it. So why did he give him the case to begin with? You know, was it just something he was focused on because he was listening to the podcasts? Or is it something that just popped up because, you know, the killings happened again and he's like, let's deal with this. But if so, why? What does he benefit from that, and what does the team benefit from that? I don't know. It just seems very random. So, all in all, this episode, it was not that great. However, it does have some great moments at the end. And that's kind of what saves it for me a little bit, because it's all building towards something. You know, Reddington, we get to the end of this episode, and he goes to see Dembe, and gives him this really nice speech about how, you know, Dembe is not, like, he's not really sure how to classify their relationship. You know, it's not really a friendship. It's not really love. Like, what is it exactly? And just that speech he gives to him, it's just really, really nice. You're talking about how Liz has betrayed him, has lied to him before. He's forgiven her. He doesn't have to forgive Dembe because he can do no wrong. I'm like, that's really sweet. And then, of course, Dembe, in return, says, I can't forgive you for all the stuff you've done. And we've seen some hints that he's not really sure if he trusts Reddington anymore, if he really believes in his crusade that he's believed in for so long. And it's like, once he sort of decides, he has this moment where he can't really trust Liz at the moment, and Dembe feels like he's lost his guiding light a little bit now that Liz has betrayed him. That I feel like all of that has sort of culminated to the point where now he doesn't feel like he can trust Reddington's judgment anymore, and he can't follow him. So I am a little sad because that means Dembe's going to be out of the show for a little bit, and I love Dembe. Dembe's awesome. So the fact that he's not going to be involved is very sad. I assume he'll probably come back at some point. I just don't know when. Probably at the last minute, you know, if they need him for something, he'll show up and help out. But for the time being, I am going to miss him, and I hope he comes back soon. And then, of course, there's the other big moment where Wrestler finally reveals to Liz everything that he's been doing. And she finally finds out, because when he showed her the picture, there was a part of me that was like, wait a minute, didn't she see him before but she didn't know who he was? And sure enough, she has this look in her eye like, holy crap, and then she goes immediately to his house. And he, of course, thinks that, or he talks to her as if, oh, you're just Agent Keene. But, of course, she knows now that he knows a lot more than he's letting on. So I feel like this is going to be definitely a big plot point going forward. In the next episode I saw, it doesn't have like a blacklister, so it's going to be like just focused on probably, I don't know, maybe some stories about Katarina's relationship with her father. Like maybe he'll recount some of those stories. I don't know. I feel like they've shown Katarina a little bit during this season, so I guess we do have an actress that... No, we have had an actress that's played her before. So, I don't know. Maybe next episode will be about her. Maybe it'll be, you know, Liz just finding out more about her mother. I don't really know what to expect, but I don't know. Like, these two moments here at the end really get me interested to see what's happening next. You know, I'm still disappointed that we're not really focusing on the conspiracy as much. It kind of feels like there have been a couple episodes where it's the front focus, but then there have been a couple where it's like, you know, it's happening. We'll get to it when we get to it. But for now, let's focus on this. I don't really like that type of storytelling, especially in shows like this, where it feels like time is of the essence. You know, you never know when that attack is going to happen. And yet we're still just biding our time. Like, you know what? Let's tackle this case. You know, this guy, he's going to be on trial, and it seems like there might be a copycat. It might be somebody trying to help him get out of prison. Let's focus on this for now. Like, I don't like whenever stories do that. Whenever, oh yeah, we have so little time, but we now have suddenly all the time in the world to do something else entirely. It's just a little annoying to me. But I mean, with all that being said, though, I'm very excited to see... what episode was this? I already forgot. I need to look at this real quick. Oh, and I've lost it. Pretty sure I said this was episode 18. Pretty sure it's 18. But yeah, I mean, if it is 18, if I'm right about that, then that means we are getting close to the end. I mean, it's 4 episodes left for this season, so I feel like the climax is going to start kicking off very soon. Again, I don't know what we're going to learn from this next episode with Liz talking to her grandfather, what new information she's going to glean. I almost kind of wonder if Katerina is going to be involved somehow in this conspiracy because they are bringing her up so much right now. If not, then it feels like they've not left themselves a whole lot of time to take on the conspiracy theory and the attack. Whatever's going to happen that McMahon has planned. So, I don't know. I hope they write it well. I mean, I should be able to trust them at this point because they've done everything else so well. Just because they've had a few hiccups in a couple of these episodes that feel a bit more filler, I really shouldn't just be like, oh, well, that means the rest of these episodes are going to be crap too, because they typically write the ending of seasons very well, and they do a good job of keeping me engaged, even when I do have some complaints every now and then. So, with all that being said, that's it for these 3 episodes. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all the good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Blacklist reviews, and I'll see you guys at the next one. Peace out.